Judge Walter Grayson believed he was simply dealing with another uninformed teenager until the young man began to methodically unravel the prosecution's argument with the precision of someone who had spent years studying the law. What happens when the truth is revealed? Subscribe and follow to see how the story unfolds. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Inside the Los Angeles County Courthouse, the atmosphere was dense, almost oppressive, as if the very air carried the weight of judgment. Spectators filled every available seat in the gallery, murmuring with curiosity and tension as the unusual court proceedings unfolded before them. The defense table seemed disproportionately large next to the slender frame of the youth standing beside it, his hands resting in his coat pockets, his chin tilted upward in quiet defiance. 19-year-old Jalen Dawson faced two major accusations: grand theft auto and resisting arrest, both carrying serious legal consequences. However, from the look in Judge Grayson's eyes, it was evident that this case had taken on deeper implications, ones that transcended legal codes. Settling back in his high-backed leather chair, Grayson tapped his fingertips against the polished wood of his bench in a rhythm that suggested boredom, not urgency. He cast a glance over his reading glasses toward Jalen, his mouth curling into something that resembled both amusement and disdain. "You think you're some kind of legal genius?" he asked dryly, his tone carrying the bemused condescension of someone humoring a child. "This isn't a schoolyard debate team, son," he added, eliciting soft laughter from those seated around the courtroom. The bailiff smirked. The stenographer's lips twitched. Even the prosecutor allowed himself a knowing chuckle. But Jalen remained unfazed, his face impassive, his body still. He didn't join the laughter because he didn't find any of this funny. He had been preparing for a moment like this for most of his life. Not this particular trial, of course, but the pressure, the audience, the system. While his peers memorized sports statistics and video game lore, he studied criminal statutes and appellate rulings. His recreation involved conducting pretend court hearings in his bedroom, arguing fictional cases out loud with himself as both defense and prosecution. His mother, Denise Dawson, had been a paralegal for more than 2 decades and routinely brought home stories about how the legal system really worked. Through her, Jalen learned that prosecutors sometimes cut corners, that judges had biases, and that many court-appointed defense attorneys merely went through the motions. He absorbed every anecdote, every injustice, every lesson, until dissecting trials became second nature to him. By the time he was in his early teens, he could analyze court strategy better than most first-year law students. But none of that mattered to Judge Grayson, who only saw a young man of color seated at the defendant's table. "Let's get this over with," Grayson muttered, flipping open the case file with a sigh. "About a tea time at 2. The courtroom tittered again at the comment, but something subtle shifted in the air. Jalen's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. Grayson had just revealed a crack in his professionalism, and Jalen saw it for what it was, a mistake. No one else seemed to catch it, but Jalen had been paying close attention. The tide was about to turn. The prosecutor, Mitchell Carrington, stood with the confident posture of a man who had already chalked this case up as a victory. Every detail about him was meticulous. His navy suit pressed, his silk tie centered, his voice modulated like a seasoned speaker. "Your Honor," he began, his tone practiced and assertive, "the state will present irrefutable evidence that the defendant, Jalen Dawson, was apprehended while in possession of a stolen vehicle. The car in question," Carrington continued, "was a 2022 Audi A6, reported stolen just hours before Mr. Dawson was arrested. Law enforcement engaged in pursuit through downtown Los Angeles, during which the defendant attempted to evade capture," he said. "He was ultimately taken into custody, and forensic analysis later confirmed his fingerprints were found on the vehicle's steering wheel," Carrington added. "These facts are clear," the prosecutor said, his words hitting like hammer strikes, as the audience exchanged looks and hushed whispers. On paper, the case seemed open and shut. A stolen luxury car, a chase, and physical evidence. Judge Grayson looked again at Jalen before motioning for Carrington to proceed with his argument. Carrington stepped toward the jury box, his footsteps echoing in the silence, the sound of confidence. The defense may attempt to suggest this is all a misunderstanding, he told the jury, that Mr. Dawson was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. He paused, looking directly at Jalen, eyes narrowed. But let's be honest, innocent people don't flee the police. The mood in the room shifted further into intensity as Judge Grayson leaned forward, interest peaked. Jalen met Carrington's gaze without blinking, unwavering, unreadable. Carrington flipped to another page in his file, keeping the momentum going. I also have a statement from Officer Daniel Ruiz, he said, who personally witnessed the defendant behind the wheel of the stolen car. The vehicle was confirmed stolen, and the arrest was conducted in accordance with all procedures, Carrington concluded. Grayson nodded, murmuring, "Sounds straightforward enough," mirroring the courtroom's general sentiment. For most people, the facts aligned cleanly, but not for Jalen, who had spent years training his eye to spot flaws. Still, he said nothing, choosing to bide his time, knowing the right moment would come. Grayson gave his gavel a soft tap. "Let's hear the defense," he said, turning toward the defense table. Lisa Thornton, the public defender assigned to Jalen, rose hesitantly. She had spoken little throughout the proceeding. "Your Honor," she began, but Jalen gently touched her arm, stopping her. She hesitated, glanced at him, then nodded and sat down without further protest. "I'll be representing myself," Jalen said clearly, and the courtroom went completely still. Grayson raised his eyebrows, amused by the bold declaration. "You'll what?" he asked. "I'll be defending myself," Jalen repeated calmly, his voice even and unwavering. A ripple moved through the crowd. The bailiff's expression shifted in surprise. Carrington's grin twitched. "This ought to be entertaining," the prosecutor muttered with a half-laugh, but something in his voice betrayed uncertainty. Jalen stepped forward, the courtroom holding its breath, the air heavier than before. He let the silence linger, deliberately increasing the discomfort before finally breaking it. "Your Honor, before I begin my opening statement, I'd like to clarify a detail with the prosecution," Jalen said. Carrington crossed his arms with a skeptical smirk. "Go ahead," he replied. "You stated that Officer Ruiz saw me inside the vehicle before my arrest, correct?" Jalen asked, voice steady. Carrington responded with a tired exhale. "Yes, that's what the report says." Jalen turned to the judge. "Then I move to strike that testimony," he said. Grayson squinted, puzzled. "On what grounds?" Jalen removed his hands from his pockets for the first time, pointing to the prosecution's table. "Because Officer Ruiz never saw me inside that vehicle. He wasn't even on duty when the pursuit began." Carrington blinked in confusion, his practiced composure wavering. "What are you talking about?" "If allowed by the court," Jalen continued, "I'd like to request a verification of Officer Ruiz's GPS data from that night. If his report claims he witnessed me in the vehicle, then his location data should align, but I doubt it will." The gallery stirred again, louder this time, their whispers reflecting growing curiosity. Judge Grayson looked toward Carrington, his brow furrowed. "The report was submitted by a police officer, Your Honor," Carrington said defensively. "Are we really questioning that based on a defendant's word?" Jalen gave a small, deliberate shrug. "If he was where he said, the logs will confirm it. If not," he let the sentence trail off, the implication loud in its absence. Grayson studied Jalen carefully, then addressed Carrington. "Does the state object to confirming the officer's GPS data?" Carrington paused a moment too long. The jury noticed. The audience noticed. Most importantly, Grayson noticed. Jalen inhaled slowly. He had seen this hesitation in real trials. It meant something was wrong. Finally, Carrington shook his head. "No objection, Your Honor." But the damage was already done. The tone of the room had shifted. The mockery was gone. What remained was tension and curiosity. Carrington tried to regroup. Regardless, the defendant's fingerprints were on the stolen car's steering wheel. Jalen nodded slightly. "That's accurate," he acknowledged. He stepped forward again. "But let's examine what that really means." Grayson motioned for him to continue, eyes narrowing with interest. Jalen turned to the jurors, scanning each face. They want you to believe fingerprints equal guilt. But think logically. If you try on a jacket at a store, touch it, zip it, then hang it back, and later someone steals it, are you guilty just because your prints are there? Some jurors exchanged glances. A low whisper rolled through the gallery. Jalen pressed forward. The car was parked outside at 7-11 hours before the theft. I was inside with 3 friends. On the way out, I leaned against it. The door was unlocked. I opened it briefly. I didn't steal it. I didn't drive it. I didn't even take anything from inside, he said. Just a stupid moment of curiosity, nothing more. He paused, then delivered the question like a blade. Does touching something make you a criminal? Carrington rifled through his notes, visibly flustered, looking for anything that could reset the narrative. Jalen continued. Let's talk about that fingerprint evidence, he said, turning to Grayson. Was the forensic analyst subpoenaed to testify today? He asked. Grayson glanced at Carrington, who looked uneasy. No, Your Honor, Carrington finally admitted. So I can't question the expert who handled the evidence used against me. No chance to verify how it was processed, stored, or whether the chain of custody was followed. Carrington's jaw tensed. Jalen nodded to himself. Interesting, he said quietly. Grayson exhaled again, clearly realizing that this case was no longer a formality. But Jalen wasn't finished. Not yet. The next point would tip the scales entirely. I'd like to submit a statement from the registered owner of the vehicle, Jalen said. The owner? Grayson asked, surprised. Jalen nodded. Yes, Mr. Raymond Whitaker. His statement was never filed with the court for some reason. He turned to Carrington. You remember what he said, don't you? Carrington's jaw tightened. He did remember. Jalen pulled out a document. Here's what Mr. Whitaker told police the night his car was stolen. I left my car running at the gas station. Some kid jumped in and drove off. But the person you arrested isn't him. I saw the kid. He was white. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Jalen held up the statement. This was in the original police report, the one the prosecution never mentioned. The arresting officer left this part out. The prosecution ignored it. And now they want you to believe I, a black man, matched the description of a white thief. Carrington stepped forward, desperate. Irrelevant. The defendant was found with the vehicle. No, Jalen said. I wasn't. His voice was calm, but it sliced through the room like a knife. I was arrested blocks away, walking home after getting snacks with friends. I wasn't driving. I wasn't near the car. I wasn't running. The only thing connecting me to this case is flawed police work and lazy assumptions. Judge Grayson rubbed his forehead, his face weary as the structure of the case collapsed. Jalen faced the jury again. The real thief got away. The officers grabbed someone who looked close enough. That's what this is about. Silence enveloped the room. Grayson cleared his throat. Does the prosecution have anything else? Carrington, red-faced, said stiffly, No, Your Honor. Grayson looked at Jalen for a long moment, then turned to the jury. He leaned forward and delivered the final blow. Case dismissed. A second of stunned stillness. Then the courtroom erupted. Some spectators gasped. Others applauded. Reporters scribbled notes frantically. Jalen remained still, letting the moment wash over the room. Grayson, still gripping his gavel, looked at Jalen differently now. There was something in his eyes, maybe recognition, maybe regret. Jalen nodded once, then turned to walk out. At the threshold, Grayson spoke again. Mr. Dawson. Jalen paused. You should think about law school, the judge said. Jalen smiled faintly. He didn't need to think about it. He already had plans. Outside, the media swarmed him, voices rising in a storm. Did you expect the dismissal? What's next? How did you beat the system? He pulled his hoodie over his head, ignoring them. This wasn't about ego. It was about something bigger. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, his mother waited. She looked at him, arms crossed, her face unreadable. You scared me half to death, she said, voice soft. He smiled. Had to take a risk, Ma. She stared for another beat, then hugged him tight. You always were the stubborn one. Across the street, Judge Grayson watched silently. No arrogance now, only reflection. He had expected just another case. But Jalen changed that. Jalen made the system look in the mirror, and for once it flinched. And now, we should all ask, how many others didn't get the chance to speak up? How many lives were changed not by truth, but by assumption and neglect? Jalen had the tools to fight, but many don't. This wasn't just a courtroom victory. It was a warning. The next time, Jalen won't be the defendant. He'll be the defense. And when that day comes, he won't be alone. If this story made you pause, share it. Justice isn't automatic. It's built by us, and we have to keep building it right. The story of Jalen Dawson in the courtroom is far more than just a legal drama. It's a powerful commentary on justice, bias, and the resilience of an individual determined to be heard. Reading through this narrative, I found myself struck not just by the twists in the case, but by the quiet strength and clarity with which Jalen conducted himself. His courage in representing himself, in the face of a system that had already made assumptions about him, is nothing short of inspiring. What resonates most is how easily a life could have been unjustly derailed if Jalen hadn't known his rights and the legal system. The courtroom, meant to be a place of truth and justice, was initially filled with mockery, prejudice, and overconfidence from the very people responsible for upholding the law. Judge Grayson, the bailiff, the prosecutor, they all dismissed Jalen as just another young defendant without even hearing him out. That's a terrifying reality for many who lack the education, resources, or composure to fight back. Jalen's knowledge, however, gave him power. He wasn't just defending himself from charges. He was defending himself from a system quick to stereotype him. He used logic, calm reasoning, and hard evidence to dismantle a case that many thought was open and shut. That moment when he exposed inconsistencies in the police report and referenced missing statements from the vehicle owner was a turning point, not just in the case, but in the courtroom's perception of him. The lesson here is profound. The justice system, while built on laws, is flawed because it's run by people, and people can be biased, lazy, or even negligent. Jalen's story shows the importance of education and critical thinking. It underscores how vital it is for individuals, especially those from marginalized communities, to understand their rights and how the legal process works. Knowledge, in this case, became a shield against injustice. But it also raises a haunting question. What about those who didn't grow up with a mother working in law? What about those who never had the chance or support to learn these systems? The story compels us not only to admire Jalen's brilliance, but to reflect on how many others have been wrongly convicted simply because they didn't know how to defend themselves. Ultimately, this is not just Jalen's victory. It's a wake-up call for everyone. A call to demand better from the institutions we rely on. A reminder that we must not only seek justice for ourselves, but fight to make it accessible to others. Because the next time it might not be Jalen, it might be someone we know, or even ourselves. If you found this story meaningful and want to help us spread these important values, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next inspirational story. Together, we can build a strong community filled with compassion and a sense of justice.